Right, good morning. I've been waiting for the official word that we have gone online. You're welcome to the Scrutiny meeting today, and look forward to your contributions and as appropriate. Can I ask for any apologies for the meeting?
We have an apology from Councillor Balfour, convener, and maybe just also to say that Councillor Ritchie, or Deputy Provost Ritchie, has joined the committee, or rejoined the committee, so we welcome her back.
Yes, welcome back, Deputy Provost. We go straight on to the next item of business. Any declarations of interest? Hearing none, we go on to the minutes of section C. The minute has been tabled. Can I ask if anyone wishes to make any comments on the minute, the accuracy of the minute?
Councillor,
Can I have that confirmed, please?
Agreed.
Thank you. Straight then on to item 4, the rolling action log. The rolling action log has got one long outstanding item under it regarding the progress for St. Primary School. I wonder if there's anyone available that could answer that question for us. Ask any officer that's present. Lisa, are you able to give us an answer to that one, please?
Yes, convener, thank you. We would be happy to bring that forward to the next committee if that was suitable.
Sure. Do you fully anticipate a report to be available for that meeting? By
Yes.
that final meeting? Excellent.
Yes, we have had the report now from Education Scotland, so we're in a position to bring that forward at the next meeting.
Right, thank you very much.
It's really helpful just to say, convener, that we don't have a scheduled meeting in the diary, but the intention is to have one final meeting of the Scrutiny Committee mid to late March. So that being the case, we would expect to have the report from Children's Services.
That will certainly be an item that will be raised at that March meeting, and it's convenient that before the council departs, we have at least a response to this long outstanding item. I don't think there's anything else, but sorry. Oh, sorry, my apologies. I don't see it very well here. John, yeah. John.
Thanks, convener. No, I'm delighted there we've had an update that is going to come to this extra meeting that we've got held in March, because it's been such a long time waiting to go back out there for the staff and the parent council looking to see, how much improvement's been made, and it's very, stressful for staff. And then obviously the reporters have been out and looked at it again, the examiners, and so it's good that this is going to come, because it lets the school move on, hopefully, and to take forward any recommendations that's on that proposal. But it's been an awful long time waiting on it, and as I say, it's not good for staff to hear things as long as that hanging over them.
Thank you for that, John. Councillor Blackwood, your hands up too. Thank you.
Thanks, convener. Just on the Scrutiny panel and Pupil Equity Fund, I thought I was on that panel. I thought that was concluded, but I'm obviously wrong.
I think the situation was that it was agreed that the outcome of the working panel would be referred for another year, so that we would get a report on this progress following your work.
Okay, right. Thanks, convener.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments regarding the rolling action log? If not, we go straight on to item 5, on the corporate plan 2022. Can I ask? I believe that Karen Algie has joined us and will lead this item.
Yes, thank you, Convener. It is myself, so thank you. So this report, Convener, provides members with an update on the activities that we have been undertaking to deliver on the corporate plan priority of innovation. And just as a reminder for committee, the innovation priority focuses on a range of things, including new ways to deliver our services and new ways of working to meet our financial challenges. It focuses on collaborative working to ensure we deliver what our communities want, creating a can-do culture, encouraging creativity and innovation, putting a greater focus on digital service initiatives and making sure our services are available 7 days a week, with a greater move to online services where appropriate, but also recognising that some of our citizens still want that direct contact with officers when required. It also looks at automating our services, and it looks at our portfolio of buildings and making the best use of them. So as part of the document that you have before you this morning, we've presented a range of information to help committee consider our performance under this area. Appendix 1 of the report provides a summary dashboard of overall performance, and you'll see that this is rated at the moment as red, and hopefully as we explain some of the appendices, that should explain that assessment. Appendix 2 of the report provides you with an update on the specific corporate plan actions for innovation, and you'll see within that appendix that the very top line in the box tells you what those actions are, and that's followed by a separate box that lists out the activities that we've been undertaking to deliver on those actions. And our progress in these is rated as green, so in other words, we are on track with these actions. There are a number of positive achievements coming out of these, and some of these are set out in paragraph 4.10 of the report, although clearly a lot more detail is provided for committee in Appendix 2. At Appendix 3 of the report, we have an update for you on the Council of the Future projects which are aligned to innovation. And at paragraph 4.4 of the report, there is a summary of what the information in Appendix 3 is showing. And you'll see that 4 of our projects are reported as red, in other words, being behind schedule. Excuse me, we have an innovation workstream board this afternoon to consider these, and I am pleased to report that the analog to digital project that's currently showing as red, as well as the 2 ZBB projects, are now back on track, and the work that we've done in between times has removed them from that red category. It's simply a timing thing since this report was produced. The HQ and Arts Centre project remains as red, but members will be aware of the significant work that is being undertaken on this project. And once final decisions have been made by members on the work, we will then rescope that project, redefine the milestones, and that should bring the project back on track as well. Appendix 4 of the report provides you with the performance indicators that are linked to innovation, with 4 being well on track. 2 of the indicators which are showing as red are linked to absence, which is linked to our wellbeing approach, and this is part of a separate report on committee's agenda today to give you some more information on that. Appendix 5 provides committee with the information on the local government benchmarking framework indicators, and these are the ones that are linked to innovation. So whilst it's important that committee see and consider these indicators, committee will also know that these indicators are produced on an annual basis and often very out of date by the time that we consider them. So at this stage in the cycle of these being produced, they may well be of limited benefit, but it is, however, important to present them to you today for completeness. At a previous meeting of committee, members also asked for an update on the performance of the contact centre, and some information on this is provided for committee's information at paragraphs 4.7 through to 4.9 of the report. And you'll see by comparison to last year that performance has improved. We have some additional staff within the contact centre now, and we have also undertaken work to automate the payment arrangements where customers can automatically make a payment without a requirement to speak to an advisor should they wish to do so. We're not, however, complacent. Whilst there's an improvement, we're not complacent. Further work does need to be done on this, and you'll see some of that reflected in the report. The recommendation, convener, is set out in section 2 of the report, and I would be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen, for that. Throw it open to members for questions. Councillor Blackwood.
Thanks, Convener. It's just a question on the last point the Karen made on the contact centre. And yes, there's certainly an improvement. We've increased the number by 2 full-time equivalents. However, the average number of calls is reduced by about 5,000, 4,900. So I'm just wondering where the efficiency comes in here, because increased numbers and reduced calls, so you'd expect it to be more efficient. Another question I've got is in 4.8 about the automated payment. Have we had any feedback on how well that's operating at the moment? I know it's early days, but maybe some feedback. Thanks, Convener.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks, convener. Happy to answer that. If you look at the second column on the table that you were referring to, there is an indication of the number of calls that were answered. So you will see an increased number of calls answered. So that's showing where the extra 2 staff have come in. But convener, if you're in agreement to this, I would like to bring Anne-Marie Nielsen in, who is the service manager, and we'll be able to provide some more detailed information on that, if you don't mind.
Certainly, that will be excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, convener and Karen. Yes, the call volumes have dropped, but as Karen's pointed out, the average wait to answer has significantly dropped as well. What we can't comment on, or what we haven't provided here, is the detail on the length of calls. So quite often calls can take much longer, particularly if we're involved in chasing up some follow-up for a service request, whether it be in relation to bins or housing repairs, etc. And a lot of those can be lengthy. We've now got additional information and additional reports produced via the technology available that allows us to look at agent performance. So what we can then do is look at the average time in their day they're spending on calls, the average downtime they've got, the average time that each call is taking. And our focus now is in looking at individual agent performances on a daily and weekly basis and coaching staff to reduce their downtime and to be able to close calls earlier where it's appropriate. And also the focus is on making sure that we've got processes in place with services that allow us to get the information quicker so that we can reduce the call length.
Thank you, Annette.
Convener, could I just add a supplementary
yes,
question there? See
certainly.
the average contact calls per month, do they include the automated payment calls, or are they a separate entity?
These are the calls that have been answered by the call handlers,
Right,
so
okay,
the ones that
right.
have been where it's required a call handler to deal with it.
Right, thank you. Thank you.
Sorry.
Thanks, Convener.
Sorry, Councillor Blackwood, is that to you?
That's me, Convener, yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Flynn?
Yeah, thank you, convener. I would like to actually, first of all, make a couple of points, but raise some questions on the sickness stroke absence area of the report. And I think that's pages 30 and 39 specifically. First of all, I would like to make it clear that any comments I make are not related, of course, to any COVID-related sickness or absence, which is a totally different entity, and I fully understand that. You know, one thing that would be really useful, certainly for me, I don't know about other members, is that when it quotes a percentage of sickness, for example, say 5%, it'd be useful to know, referring to whichever department is mentioned there, how many employees are in that department. For example, if there's 10 people in a department, then obviously 5%, you know, well, you know, it is not that relevant. But if there's 1,000 employees, then it's quite a significant number. So the numbers would be useful, you know, along with the percentages, because as we all know, percentages on their own, you know, can sometimes not necessarily give the full picture. The point I'd like to make, and it relates to the questions, is that obviously if in any organisation, if people are off sick or off work, then that affects the efficiency of the department, the work output, and the services, and particularly services related to obviously our constituents across the whole of Falkirk, you know. And my main question is two parts, convener. The first one is, and it's just a random example, if we take a department where there's 5% sickness, I do find it surprising that we have a target, obviously less than 5%, hypothetically, let's say 4.5%. And I don't believe myself, based on many years of experience and with other companies, that having a target for sickness, any number, is really relevant. The target should be, of course, 0, which of course we all know in Falkirk Council or any other organisation wouldn't be attainable, but it's a target. You know, when you're aiming at a target, with a bow and arrow, you aim for the centre, and you don't say, well, let's aim for the outer ring. So I do question that, because if you get a target of 5% and say, sorry about that, say that the new target is 4.5%, then how many years is it going to take to get down to 1%? And it also, I believe, it creates a false impression with in any organisation with the workforce, saying, well, I've only been off a handful of days. It's within the target there. So I would like to actually say we should, I believe, have a 0% target, albeit we know it's not attainable, as opposed to that. And to give you a sort of analogy, many organisations, particularly large industrial ones, we often see it outside their businesses, where they say number of accidents in the last calendar year, let's say 100.
Sure.
They don't put for the following
Right.
calendar year, let's aim for a target of 95. They say, let's aim for 0. So it's the same thought process I'm going through. And then my final question, convener, thank you, is what is the protocol? And it's not the COVID-related instances, when people are ill, what do they have to do? And I'll give you a wee example. My last company I worked for 13 years, and they had an absence problem. And one of the things introduced was quite simply that the person that was ill, unless they're seriously ill, or in hospital, had to personally phone their line manager to say that they won't be in to work this day, and explain why. And we can all, speculate the reasons, but the absence rate did drop a bit, because it is quite a challenge to get up and say, all right, okay, I'm not feeling too good, but I've got to phone my manager. So I hope that clarifies my two questions. Thanks, convener.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jim, for that. Karen, I think you are definitely in the target for these questions. I'll throw it open to you.
No problem at all, convener. No problem. I'll certainly try and answer your points, Councillor Flynn, and thank you for those. Firstly, in relation to the statistics, I absolutely recognise the point you're saying, that it would be helpful to see the context in which these are being set. And for information, I think there's two statistics in the information presented. One is corporate and housing services, so the percentage links to around 1,300 employees, and the other one is craft, and that relates to around 340 employees or thereabouts. So just to give you a rough indication today, but for future reports, I take that point on board. Thank you.
Thank you.
In terms of the targets for sickness absence, I do recognise what you're saying. I think, however, that we need to be realistic when we're setting targets. These are about management targets to make sure that we reduce our absence. And it's about setting something that is realistic and achievable for managers. I absolutely wouldn't disagree with you in terms of trying to get to 0 for our absence, but we do need to be realistic about the levels of wellbeing issues that are within our workforce. So these are, it's worth saying as well that these are reviewed, and we do look at where our absence levels are and how we could maybe change the targets to reduce them if we can. Now, we've never, in most services, we've never got to that 4% target. We absolutely need to. It'd be fair to say that our statistics over the past wee while have shown, if I set the COVID period aside, because we haven't got detailed information for that, our statistics over the last wee while, excluding that period, have shown an increasing and improving picture when we look across Scotland. So that's good. And that's often where we look at a benchmark from as well, try and set those absence levels. I think it is worth saying, though, that there are probably three factors in managing absence, three key parts. One is about the policies, the procedures, the targets, the monitoring, making sure we're on top of all of that, making sure we get feedback from employees, from managers, from trade unions as to how well or not those are working, taking proactive actions to change those where we need to then update and ensure that we're doing everything possible to support attendance at work. There's then a factor around our communication and engagement with our workforce, making sure employees understand the expectation that they should be at their work unless there are real reasons why they shouldn't be. Then I think when you look at the work we do to support employees, there are clearly genuine reasons and for them being off, and there are well-being reasons. And these well-being reasons can often be complicated, and our policies need to support that too. Sometimes it is a straightforward illness, it can be a complicated illness, but there can be a range of other factors in there. There can be factors around their home situation, factors around poverty impacting on well-being, factors around horrific things like domestic abuse affecting their well-being. So when a manager, and the third factor is the manager's action to then support employees, and when the managers are supporting employees, it's about them trying to get to the root causes of the absence. And where those are well-being related and health related, we can make sure that we're providing support through our occupational health services, through our counselling, through our physio services. And we also have arrangements in place to encourage managers to refer employees very early on for these, where, for example, there's a mental wellbeing process issue, to refer them for counselling at a very early stage, to make use of our stress risk assessment tools, to see if there's anything in the workplace that we can adapt or change that would support the employee to be back at work. And where it's a musculoskeletal problem, we have physiotherapy services that we would also ask managers to refer very early for, to ensure that employees get access to that type of support so we can help. Long-term absence doesn't serve anyone well, so the sooner we can get them back to work, the better, because sometimes even if it's not linked to mental well-being, it can often result in mental well-being if someone's off for a long period of time. So it is important that we are on top of that and that managers keep in contact. In terms of general processes, employees, if they go off sick, they're required to contact us on day 1, day 4 and day 7 of their absence. If it then goes into a medically certified absence, managers should be in regular contact with employees to check in with them to see how they're doing. And there will also be other points of contact when we do things like making referrals for occupational health, physio, etc., etc. We've also got a range of support on our website for employees, and some of that will be covered in the next report that's on wellbeing. But I hope that picks up on the points that you've raised. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, thank you very much, Karen, and thank you for agreeing to put in the numbers. That's a great help as well. I do understand as well that there's a whole range of things, and I'm really pleased to see, particularly on the mental health issue, that you're giving employees support, because obviously in past times this is an area where people have kind of sort of not dismissed, but not had the focus it's necessary. My only other final point really is that pre-COVID, there were, and there still are, absence charts, and in some departments the absence rate was incredibly low, and I won't mention the department, some other departments it was the opposite end of the scale, and I think working to get these numbers down, because as you rightly say, it affects everything, from the whole process there, and of course I wouldn't for a minute say that anyone that's genuinely ill shouldn't be off work. Of course they should. It's just that marginal thing. We've all been in the same situation. I was in the same situation last week. I had to go to bed for a day because I wasn't feeling well, and the following day I thought, well, what will I do? And I decided, and it's my decision, to get on with work, but that's okay for me and my counsellor. It's difficult obviously for employees, but no, thank you very much for that, and thank you, convener. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, for that. Questions I see from Councillor Binney and also from Councillor McCluskey. Lorna, first of all, you've been kept waiting.
Thank you. Sorry to spotlight in the contact centre performance. I must admit, when I'm out and about in my communities, unfortunately, nearly everybody I speak to does say they've got an issue trying to get through to Falkirk Council, and I really hate to say that. Basically, either the length of time, or they can't get through, or they give up and things like that. But with regard to the report, I'm really pleased to see an improvement on the percentage of calls answered for the month for July to December 21 period, and obviously the extra call handlers put in place. That is good. And obviously the introduction of the automated line. Though what I would say is, if I'm reading this right and understand it, though 1 in 4 calls are still not answered. And the question behind that is, how does that compare with other councils? But I also note that a lot of these calls are interactions. I would really like to dig deeper into that and find out what percentage of these calls are those, because that is about all our services behind that. And that is very important to find out, you know, our customer service. And, you know, and I totally appreciate what's happened with staff and the challenges that they've had. But I would like to find out a wee bit more data about those interactions and what percentage of these calls are those. And also, with regard, 1 in 4 calls are not answered. I suppose that makes me think, do we have enough resource? Do we have enough call handlers here, knowing what I'm hearing from our community at present?
I can answer that for you, Councillor Binney. We've got really detailed stats about calls and when calls come into the contact centre, and I've probably said this to everyone before, that between 9 and 9:45, even if we put on 200 call handlers, we probably wouldn't be able to answer all the calls because it's a particular peak time. Now, one of the things that we've done recently is that we've undertaken a pilot in social work call handling. So as you understand, these are the priority calls. They could be really important. There could be someone at risk, and we prioritise getting these calls answered. So for the October to December period, we piloted dispersing the calls also to the local office support staff that we have supporting social work, which meant that we had an additional 15 trained call handlers for that period, and we reduced the abandoned calls, the calls where people hung up, by over 40%. So as a result of that pilot, we're rolling that out on a permanent basis, and from the 7th of February, it means that in effect, we've got a virtual contact centre for the social work call handling. We still have the existing social work call handlers, but we have enabled all the local office support staff. We've trained them to be able to log in and be available at peak times, so that in the event, which often happens between sort of 9:45 and then at lunchtimes, in the event that all the social work call handlers are currently on a call, they're then able to take the call. That's been really successful, and we're now going to be moving on and look at what other areas can we do that, because it isn't cost effective to add additional resource to the contact centre, because across that team of 4 or 5 call handlers, there's significant downtime in the afternoons when no social work calls come in. So it's really difficult trying to find tasks for them to do. We're now transferring the social work call handling staff into the local office support team, which means that they get additional support at quieter times to help them with clerical and admin tasks, and equally the call handling aspect gets additional support at the really peak time.
That's good to hear that. I'm really pleased that you're adapting. There's a certain amount of flexibility in there. And I totally agree that, and I do welcome the project Council of Future Digital Communities coming forward. And I think that will be really good actually to look at that in far more detail. But with regard to that project, do you have timescales for that? Is that expected to be completed in 6 months, a year, something like that? Because obviously that's important too.
We haven't looked at what the next area to roll the call handling out to. One of the challenges that we've got is that is grading issues. So the contact centre call handlers for social work were the same grade as all the local office support staff, whereas the wider contact centre call handlers who handle multiple functions are a higher grade than the staff in the services. So we don't have a rollout programme yet because we need to look at the various HR issues, and we need to be looking at what's happening with the Unified Customer Journey project, which is aiming to reduce and minimise the number of calls that come in the first place, because, as you quite rightly said, there's a number of interactions as opposed to transactions. We don't have stats on that. We just know anecdotally that there's a significant number. So we are currently using the technology and wrap-up codes that call handlers are able to use at the end of calls to identify what was the purpose of the call, to be able to analyse that and look at how many of these are we able to eliminate in the first place by offering regular ways for them to get updates for themselves.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor McCluskey?
Thanks, convener, and I'll start off with the same one as obviously my colleague and Mrs. Binney said. But unlike Mrs. Binney, I've not got a problem with asking the questions about this. Quite clearly, I don't think things have improved. And the statistics used, we have to be able to compare apples with apples. Councillor Blackwood made the case that there's 5,000 people less. Now, if you take the 15 call handlers, you know, at different times of the day, but altogether, but that would work out at 300 odd extra calls each handler because of the 5,000 less. So it's quite easy, surely, to be a formula to find out. Well, if they 300, if each handler had got an extra 300 calls, how would that have affected the response times to answer the phones? So there has to be a way of showing improvement. We can't next time it comes up, look at it and says, oh, there are further 5,000 folk off, so we've made improvements again. The reality is that a lot of the people's maybe no phoning back because they're fed up waiting and trying to get through. And what we've got to, and that's because councillors in the front line, and that's what we get constantly, as Councillor Binney says and which Councillor Blackwood says. We're on the front line. The people who get through didn't contact us as the people who don't get through. And surely with their quieter times of the day, are we able then to phone some of these people back who have suddenly, after trying to get through for a long time, cut off, you know, so that we can show, we noticed you were on call there, has your problem been resolved? I do listen earnestly, and I brought this up the last time, convener, as well, about the priority for social work. Now, you know, I don't deny that if somebody's got a social work concern, that's a priority. But as I said, if somebody's water tank burst and their ceilings come down and they're feared of getting electrocuted, that's an emergency too, just the same, an urgent call, you know, and they folks entitled to a response as well if they're trying to get through. So as I say, we have to try to get a system in place where we are improving things and that, but we've got a way of dealing with it to show we're making improvements. And as I say, the answers didn't compute to me and saying, you know, oh, overall it's a quicker time in answering the call. It just doesn't, it doesn't make up. A lot of people are frustrated there. Thankfully, there's only, you know, there is one other thing. One of the health places down in Falkirk has worse. You're 6 in the queue and go down to second, and I heard, and then they cut off. So they phone again and they go for 8th down to second and cut off. So isn't it just the council that they're complaining about, you know? So, but it is a major thing that can stick you and get to us, and we get that on a daily basis, as I said. So I would like you to go back and look at the way that we monitor this and go for there. The other one is in payments, convener, if I may. The payments, somebody told us that there's a community group, I believe, and they were making a payment by cheque, and they were told, oh, we didn't take cheques when they went in to make a payment with some. Now, no, everybody has bank cards, groups deal with cheques, and there is a lot of businesses and things deals with that. So, you know, somebody's got to pay their way. You you know, if you're a licence fee and you're going to have to pay your licence fee, they didn't take cheques. So how can you pay your licence if they're not taking cheques and you've got a business account? So we need to be able to look at all sorts of things. It's handy if everybody has bank cards and just the number and it comes off, but we have to also deal with people who haven't that. Are we allowed to go into the appendixes, convener?
Yes, of course.
Because it's a
Yes, of
it's a
course you
small
may.
agenda. I normally we go into the appendix. One is the community choices update. I'm still got major concerns with this. I know there's some applications in my ward, but
John, can I
Sorry?
just change this for a moment and suggest that before you go into the appendices, we should perhaps give Annette the opportunity to respond to your question.
I always please listen to
And
the
then
chair. Thank you.
Then come back in, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, convener. Councillor McCluckie, take your point here. I think if we refer back to the table that's in the report, it shows that the average number of calls to the contact centre has certainly gone down for the past year, but the average number of calls answered has increased. So the performance has improved. We have answered more calls with the additional resource that we've got. Regarding the comparisons and benchmarking, we have joined, we've been a member of a group and we've joined another group across various councils, and we've repeatedly attempted to benchmark, but it's not possible because every contact centre across all the contact centres is set up completely differently and is handling different services and is expected to do different things at the front line. Some of them are more what you call intelligent contact centres, where they're expected to handle a whole process, including sometimes including planning applications, whereas other contact centres are merely directories and passing people on. So it's really difficult to benchmark. So what we're using is our current performance. And as I mentioned earlier, we're now not just looking at the performance in relation to the actual call volumes and the call lengths themselves. We're now focusing on the individual agents to see how we can help them to manage the calls quicker and more efficiently. And we're also exploring the option of getting additional people into the call handling facility, even if they're not contact centre advisors, getting additional people from within the wider customer and business support team in at peak times to get the calls answered quicker. So I would be expecting to see an improvement in those figures as we go forward.
Anne-Marie, thank you very much for that. I apologise for miscalling you earlier. Before Councillor McCluckie launches into the appendices, can I just ask if anyone wishes to sort of ask a question directly on the main report? If not, yes, Councillor Blackwood.
Thank you, Convener. It's actually a question asked earlier and I didn't get an answer to. I did send a wee note to Karen, but it's about the automated payment. If there's any feedback on how that was performing. I asked the question earlier and didn't get feedback to it.
I can answer that, Councillor Blackwood.
Okay.
But each time the advisors are dealing with a payment, they're discussing with the caller, is there any chance that what prevents them from using the automated system? Would they like to use it in the future? That wouldn't be suitable for everyone. I know that my own parents would not use an automated system. We have to accept that. But that's only one of the solutions. We're obviously encouraging things like direct debits, etc. as well.
Thanks.
Anne-Marie, could I
Anne-Marie.
just remind you that there was a question about using of cheques. Perhaps you could respond to that, or perhaps Karen would like to come in there.
Councillor Patrick, I can't comment on the cheques because cheques are obviously not dealt with by the contact centre. So I'm presuming they're referring to when people go into the hubs.
Aye.
Yeah.
Councillor Patrick, I will take that question away. I think
Thank
it is
you.
in relation to the hubs, and I'll take that question away and come back to Councillor McCluckie on that. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor McCluckie, this is your point to come back in again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I appreciate the answer, Anne-Marie. That was it was good. I was wanting to compare apples with apples, and apparently it's apples and pears. So that explains the difference in the benchmarking. So I'm quite happy with that. But I would say that one constituent of mine complained that they had got through after half an hour of getting through. They finally got through, and the person told them that they're closing 10 minutes for lunch. Could they phone back later? And as I say, that certainly didn't go down well to the constituent, I can tell you. But anyway, I believe they'll be able to happy customers as well. But the questions I like to go in the appendix, as I say, is the first one I mentioned was the what do you call it? The money that goes out. Clearly, there's a lot of communities still no active. I've got 14 villages, and most of the villages still aren't involved with the community choices as yet. The applications are basically coming in, a number of very good applications coming in, but they're predominantly for 2 areas out of the 14, and you know, one's got a couple of big applications up, and another one's got big applications up, but many of the other villages have never got involved with this at all. So I believe that that's something we've still got to work on. It's not a braze wide or you know, your areas to deal with if there's only a small area responding. We've got to try to get word out there and get everybody responding. And the other one was to do with the planning applications on Appendix 4 and 5. What we've got here is that we're dealing with things a bit better on planning applications that's coming in and on the commercial one. So housing applications that are in the local plan, out with the local plan, that's on page Appendix 4, and page 5 in Appendix 5, it's the commercial planning applications. Although it sounds as if we're doing well and we're dealing with the applications, we actually aren't dealing with the applications, because you can wait a year after that to get things signed off. Now, there is section 75s that have to get deal with that's mandatory, and the council's the last one to sign. But, and we know that, you know, people it takes time sometimes to work at how many houses built before they make this contribution or that contribution. But the decision's already been taken by members that they have to pay a contribution. It's just a case of them negotiating when. But the one that hodds everything up and the decision's met, and members haven't took a decision on it, because as the health board, now I brought it up at a meeting just the other day, and the issue is that you can wait after a decision's made by members. You can still wait 8-9 months, a year on health board coming back to see if there's to be a contribution. Now, there has to be a way of getting these businesses out to work, to attract the investment and the jobs to go through. And surely there has to be a time scale on an application. Basically, we're taking off as it's passed, but the reality is that, you know, normally everything's got to be addressed before you pass an application. We're passing an application and then going to a developer and saying, well, we still haven't heard from to see if there's a contribution to be made from health. And I know I raised this at another meeting the other day, and we're in planning, and we're going to send a letter to the health board. But this has been going on for the last 15 years that I've been a councillor. And sometimes years later, the health board doesn't respond at all. And in fact, like 99% of the time, they didn't respond at all. But in the big applications, they're getting held up because of this. So should we be dealing with that before we pass the application?
Not sure.
Or is there a way of dealing with it? That's what I'm saying. Right, thank you.
Thank you, John. Malcolm Benny, I saw you a minute ago. Could you respond to that? Malcolm, there you are. Yeah, I think you're mute.
Apologies, Chair. Could I just ask for that question just be repeated quickly for me?
John, can you summarise your point
Right,
in
right.
general
What
terms?
I'm trying to say, yes, a summary is we've got a performance time normally that we try to benchmark planning applications that come in, and we try to do that. However, the thing that escapes the net sometimes is we make a decision to pass something, and then we have never heard the response from the health board. And sometimes after we've passed the application, you can still wait up to a year on to see if there's to be a contribution, which wasn't decided by members because you didn't hear that information, and Section 75 kind of gets signed off. So what I'm saying is, if we signing them off early, which is meeting your targets, but it's no helping the developer and getting things moved forward, is there some way of dealing with this? And the last planning meeting, we asked that a letter get sent to the health board because it's been going on for 15 years. They're aware of the issue, but they're not obliged to respond. You write a letter and see if they've got a comment. But how long do you wait when a decision's made before you look at this? That's what I'm saying. We have to get a resolution of this.
Okay, through you, Chair. It's a technical matter that I'm not familiar with. Obviously new in the role, so if Councillor McCluskey would afford me the opportunity to speak to my planning colleagues and come back with a view on whether we're acting appropriately or whether there's a different way that we can take this forward, then hopefully that will be okay.
I've no problem with that, convener. But just to remind you that I asked one of the buses last week at the full council meeting, and you haven't to go back to me on that one. So please, thank you.
I appreciate that. I am on. We are progressing that one.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Malcolm, and thank you, John, for your questions. Sorry, someone else. You have another. Sorry, I've just been reminded you have another outstanding question not been responded to on community community choices. Karen, did you?
Yeah, convener, I'm happy to come in on that, the community choices point. Councillor McCluskey, I clearly recognise the comments you're making, and those have been made in relation to community choices. The team are doing a great deal of work to try and engage with communities, and this is when they put the programme in the first instance, it's been developing. As the programme develops, the community choices programme develops, so a huge amount of work is going into trying to further engage with communities. I will, however, take your comments back to the team to ensure that they're aware of the points that you've raised. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Karen, and thank you, John, for your questions. Could I think Councillor Blackwood wish to come in?
Yeah, it's a quick question and more a comment on page 40. The very top 1% of highest paid 5% employees who are women is going down. And I'm not surprised at that. And I look at the highest paid positions in the council being at the posts being at a chief executive or director level. In 2007, I became a councillor. The chief executive was a woman, and all directorship posts, with the exception of one, were women. Today, in Falkirk Council, there are no women hold directors posts. So I'm surprised. I'm not surprised the number's going down. I'm surprised it's not going down as far as it is. But any way we can, this will be rectified. I know the position of appointing directors falls with the councillors, but as I say, we won a complete turnaround for the majority of positions held by women to none being held by women in Falkirk Council. And that can't be doing very well. Thanks, convener.
I wonder if that is a question that can actually be capable of an answer.
Probably not. It was more a comment than a question, and I'm not expecting an answer. Just drawing it to highlight that.
Karen, if you wish to make any comment to that, please feel to do so, but you may not.
I suppose it's a comment to say that I absolutely recognise the point that Councillor Blackwood is making. It is not a good trend to have, but it is a result of fair recruitment practices and appointing the best person for the job. At the end of the day, it is exceptionally difficult within the legislation to then say, well, we're only going to appoint a female to some of these posts to make sure that our statistics are the way that we are. But I suppose one of the things that we do need to do is make sure that our processes, which I believe they are fair and open to both males and females. But it's how can we encourage more females into these roles? And some of that is very difficult. Some of the jobs in the top 5% are very high pressure jobs. Sometimes we need to recognise some of the flexibility that females require with other responsibilities they may have, such as childcare, etc. Although I recognise that in many cases males have some of these responsibilities too. So I don't, as you say, convener, I don't think it's a point that can be easily answered, but it's one that we are very much aware of.
Thank you, Karen.
Just to add, convener, that we obviously recognise the cities in the past, because say every directorship was virtually held by women. Now we don't have any, and I know for the chief executive post, no women applied, as far as I know. There's certainly no women in the shortlist. But just we're trying to promote women, we're trying to promote other avenues, and it doesn't seem to be working in Falkirk Council at the moment.
I think you're swimming in nostalgia with your question, James, but we understand exactly the comment you're making. Could I say, sorry, well, Lorna, you want to come back in?
I just want to come in, just make a wee point, and it's really about the digital in Falkirk Council. The Community Choices Capital Fund went online yesterday, and obviously a lot of people in communities were really enthused about that, but the link wasn't working. It went on and off all day. You know, it's quite disappointing when that happens. So I don't know if somebody could maybe look into that, you know, so it's a digital issue. It was just to mention that.
I'm sure it will be noted.
I'm happy to take that back, and we can look into that, no problem at all.
Thank you very much for that. Any other questions on the appendices attached to the report? If not, I'd like to thank both yourself, Karen, and also Anne-Marie, for their being open for the targets that Councillor Flynn was aiming for, and we're grateful to you for your cooperation and your responses to the questions. Thank you. We now move on to item 6 on employee well-being. And
just before we start,
sorry,
to cut across you, convener, just to say, and I think Councillor Flynn's waving, so we recognise this, and Councillor Harris, this is the point where members who are not on the committee have to sadly leave, but they can watch the live stream if they so wish. So maybe just to give the members a chance to leave.
We'll leave just now. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Okay, right, thank you. We now go on to item 6 on employee well-being, and Tracy, you've been kept waiting. Tracy Gillespie, thank you. Read this report, please.
Thank you, convener. This report's in response to a request from we have implemented new signs, posters across buildings, installed hand gel and screens, prepared a video for employees so that they were aware of what the new arrangements would actually look like on their return. In terms of wellbeing, a COVID wellbeing page was set up very early in the pandemic to provide useful information to managers and employees. That includes national, local initiatives, general health advice, and some examples of some of the good practice that was promoted and encouraged would be things like virtual tea rooms, lunchtime walks, regular one-to-one check-ins, signposting to mental health first aiders. Of course, our counselling service is in place, along with our the special leave arrangements that we put in place. During the last 20 months, I think communication has been key during this period. We have set up a number of effective trade union liaison groups. We met daily at the early stages of the pandemic, and these meetings continue on a fortnightly basis, and that enables us to have collaborative working and an opportunity to resolve issues early. We've worked very closely with trade unions to develop frequently asked questions for our employees and managers. We have a COVID frequently asked question session for managers set up on a monthly basis, which is continuing. It's well received. to make sure that managers are aware of the relevant issues that have cropped up in that previous month. We've got monthly wellbeing updates issued. Trade unions have been part of the risk assessment working group, and that's worked very well. And we've continued to encourage one-to-ones and team meetings to ensure support to our employees. Linked to this, to listen to our workforce, we've undertaken a number of surveys between June 2020 and 2021. Some of the surveys were conducted during lockdown, and an action plan has been developed in response to these survey results, and that's attached as an appendix to the report. I think it's finally, it's worth mentioning the Council's Wellbeing Group, chaired by the Chief Executive, continues to meet on a regular basis. Over the last kind of 20 months, the group has changed its focus to mental health training and the COVID response. Section 5 of the report focuses on consultation. You'll see that, as I've referred to already, there's a number of pulse surveys that have been undertaken, and the results are on the intranet. As I've mentioned already, the trade union liaison groups are set up in response to COVID, and the trade unions are also part of the wellbeing group and also the employee engagement group, and both these groups have had sight of the action plan. We are continuing discussions with our trade union colleagues on hybrid working. Given the Scottish Government's announcement this week, guidance will be issued to employees on our approach to hybrid working pending the trade union agreement on the policy. Section 6 highlights the implications. I think there are some resource and financial implications noted, but I think the main issue to highlight would be the risk section, which highlights the impact on COVID and lockdown on our employees. As an employer, we need to continue to recognise the impact and to reduce risk in areas such as absence. We need to ensure support and guidance is offered to ensure a safe workplace and support mental health issues where we can. I think in conclusion, significant guidance and support has been provided and continues to be provided to managers and employees across the council during the pandemic. Surveys have been undertaken and action plan developed. And it's important that we continue to provide support and guidance and also ensure that actions identified are progressed. The recommendations are noted at the beginning of the report in terms of noting the actions that are in place to support employees since March. And Karen and I will be happy to respond to any of any questions from the committee.
Thank you very much, Tracy. David, Councillor Grant.
Thank you, Convener, and thanks for that report, Tracy. Can I ask a question on the most recently in page 45, you mentioned about working from home, and I see there's a survey that you put out, and 73.4 indicated that they still want to work from home less than 1 or 1 to 2 days. So I take it less than 1 means like a half day that they want to come in. The question I'm asking here, Tracy, is that quite low for people, or can the council cope with that amount of people working from home, and that's their preference, obviously, but I just think the figures are awfully low for people wanting to come back to the office or whatever, considering we've refurbished the boundary. And I would like your opinion on that, because less than 1 day or 1 to 2 days, in my opinion, Tracy, just seems awfully low. Could you give me your opinion on that, please?
Thanks, Councillor Grant. I think obviously during the period of the pandemic, we have done considerable work to ensure that our employees are productive and perform well at home. And in most of the roles, that has worked really well. And I think as we move forward, the advice and guidance will be that where we have the technology in place, we should be continuing to use that. Therefore, we'll continue to have meetings where appropriate, using our technology, and that can be from any location. What we are promoting is that face-to-face contact, which would be one of the reasons to come into the office would be for one-to-ones and for team collaboration, and to ensure that there's a bit of social interaction between teams. So I think it's about identifying what is the purpose and need for a return to work, and what are the tasks that need to be done within the workplace. So I'm probably not surprised by the percentage, to be honest. What I would say is that it has shifted considerably from the first survey, in that there's more people now probably more comfortable working from home in terms, and that's probably because we've got the technology available now and better kind of IT available in order to promote that. And so in terms of the capacity issue that you mentioned in terms of the Foundry has been based on a 0.5 FTE. But what we do think that we will need to do in time is to revisit that and assess all of our workplaces that have been refurbished, so including, for instance, Cairn Bank and Grangemouth Social Work Office. We will go back and revisit that in terms of the usage, and what we have put in place is a desk booking system in order to ensure that we have got an ability to be able to assess that usage. So I think that I'm probably not surprised. I think that percentage is reflective of the national kind of surveys that I have seen in terms of research. So I'm not kind of surprised by that kind of 70-75% of people want to continue to work from home for the majority of their time. And it could be that some people will come in, obviously, for 3-4 days. Some people might come in 1 day a week, but some people might come in 1 day a fortnight just to attend a team meeting. So hopefully that answers the point.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you. Councillor Binney, would you like to come in, please?
Thank you. I really welcome this report, as a matter of fact, especially at this time, especially after a pandemic and things like that. And I know our HR department does a really good job, in the circumstances. It's important we look at our vulnerabilities as well as the positives in our organisations. However, my question is, I've actually got 2 questions, and it's about Appendix 1, page 53. Employees want more wellbeing support. The question here is, leaders and managers will carry out regular check-ins with employees. What resources given to that, especially when we do have additional pressures with all the managers and team leaders and all the services? And can you define, you spoke about regular, but how regular is that? And I'm mindful that is a time unit that is spent, especially if you've got a lot of employees that are off sick and have issues. And also with regard to employees, and if employees are not able to open up due to the way they're feeling, you said there's a multitude of different reasons why people are off sick. What extra support can be given to them? That is my first question.
Thanks, Councillor Binney. Very relevant questions in terms of the resources that are required in terms of the wellbeing support. So what I would say is that one-to-one should be happening anyway, and supervision across different teams should be happening very regularly. And the actual check-in part probably doesn't necessarily take a lot of time for most of our employees. It's really just making that contact and making sure that people feel listened to and have an opportunity to explore any issues. But in the main, I would hope that it won't be that extreme in terms of the resource required. If I look at my own team, I do regular check-ins with them and speak to them mostly every week. I would make sure that I see them on a Teams call, and we do more kind of more formal one-to-ones. So it doesn't need to be formal. It's really just making sure that people make contact and that our employees feel listened to. And in terms of the kind of regular nature of that really depends on the individuals. I know some individuals who live alone, and therefore I probably spend a wee bit more time contacting those individuals just to make sure that they're okay and check in with them. So I think it depends on individuals and their personal circumstances. But as I say, it should be happening anyway. this shouldn't really be necessarily an add-on. It's just maybe an additional question and additional focus that you might need to be cautious or and aware of. In terms of the extra support that's available, we have a counselling service available. We've got occupational health provision, and you know, obviously there's a range of resources that are available on our intranet pages. We've also got provisions for coaching of managers to help ensure that they're fit and able to respond and have the right skills to be able to respond to the issues that are being raised. So there's a substantial range of resources available depending on what the issues may be.
I'm pleased to hear that, Tracy, and I like the bit about coaching for managers as well, because maybe that's not something I've had to do. I mean, obviously the pandemic and the situation just now has changed it, sort of changed the culture and what's happening in the relationship between employees and managers too. So I'm really pleased about that. I do have another question. Could I ask that at the moment?
Yes,
And it's culture, the mental health culture. How is this achieved when mental health is your choice and you're never obliged to declare any mental illness to your employer unless it significantly affects your work? So how do we encourage this without fear and discrimination? You know, because I would imagine for a lot of people, you know, people maybe think there is a bit bias in the workplace, and I know that does happen. There's bias all over. Will this be treated the same? Will this, within Falkirk Council, will this be treated the same as the physical health? And is this our values that we wish to express to employees?
Thanks, Councillor Binney. I think I'll start off by saying that mental health will be treated in the same way as physical health. I think that's important. In terms of the culture, I think there's a number of actions that we need to take forward in terms of promoting good mental health. And I think, you know, you're right in terms of it's down to individuals as to how much they want to talk about it. But I think it's about encouraging an open culture whereby people feel comfortable being able to talk about mental health, and signposting, because some people might not want to actually speak, you know, to their manager about it, but it's making sure that individuals know where they can go to get the support that's necessary. But ultimately it's about increasing awareness within our employee groups and teams, and making people feel comfortable to be able to be open to talk about it, and signposting, I think. You know, and promoting our mental health first aiders, making sure that they're out and about, and making sure that they're visible and people know that they're there, in order to be able to contact somebody who's not necessarily the line manager, but again, it's just a different contact and a different resource that would be available.
Thanks very much, Tracy. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Blackwood.
Thanks, Convener, and thanks, Tracy, for that detailed report. My question's around 5.4. The trade unions are unable to agree the hybrid policy. I wonder if you're able to expand on the stumbling blocks here, because I would have thought the discussion's going to be around the current temporary working practice is ongoing. Just wonder whether if you're able to expand on the stumbling blocks.
Very good question, Councillor Blackwood. Very good question. I think it's fair to say that we have had quite detailed discussions with the trade unions on the hybrid policy, and if I'm fair to maybe the trade unions, there's maybe a couple of points maybe to pick up on. They're probably in a very difficult situation because they've got two camps. They've got some groups of members who are really keen for this, and other groups who just aren't. But I think probably the point that I would make, and the reason that, because I'm not saying that we've necessarily had specifics from the trade unions. There's a range of issues that have been identified, but I think the nub of this is that you may have seen sight of the most recent SGIC pay claim for 2022, and nationally they have, SGIC have raised the working from home as part of their pay claim. And I suppose my own view is that if the trade unions were to agree hybrid working policies locally, it gives the national agenda, makes their negotiating position a bit weaker. And therefore, I think that if they can maintain their position of not agreeing locally any hybrid policies, they're in a better position to be able to negotiate nationally. And I think that is the root of the problem, in that they want to maintain a national position on this rather than local arrangements. What I can maybe add to that is that we are looking at putting in arrangements on a voluntary basis, more on the basis of guidance, to allow individuals to be able to opt in to the hybrid working. If you look at the survey results that we had this year, the majority of people want to continue to work from home, even if it's only 1 day a week. And therefore, we think that by moving forward on the basis of guidance and a kind of voluntary arrangement, the majority of employees will opt into this on a voluntary basis. But a lot of it will be down to individual circumstances. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that's fine, Crazy. Thanks for that. Thank you.
Councillor McCluskey.
Thanks, Convener. I was just waiting to come in there. It's a good report, this, and obviously employee wellbeing is very important to us all. There's teams there do remarkable work. My concern is we're maybe not seeing how hard they're working, and I don't mean in a bad sense. When people are inside the office, for example, they can get the support, they've got the line managers to talk to, they're interacting and that does promote their mental well-being. I know myself that if you're working at home, it makes it a lot more difficult to go outside and meet people, because you start to get into a routine where you're happy being in the house. The other issue is to do with equipment. Obviously, working from home, not everybody's got an office. They're stuck in a wee corner of their breakfast bar in the kitchen or something like that. Me and Ruby both work and she shouts louder than me, and the two of you are in the living room, and one of you got to go up to the bedroom or something. But so it's not always easy to be working with home when you've got partners working there. And as I say, so I think the interaction is very important. The equipment, now elected members got £100 towards getting a seat or a bed or a desk or something. Now I've got a blue badge, I've got arthritis, I've got all that sort of things. And if you can get a specialised chair for £100, then you're fair better than me, because you just get a normal one for £100. And these are examples. Are we ensuring that if people are going to be long-term working from home, that they have measures in place that doesn't worsen their health ailments, foot rest if they require that, or a proper chair, or different other things. And as I said, we've also got staff who work more than their normal hours. There's that conscientious. I'll give an example. A team that get grief in allocations, that if you didn't get a house, it's that bad allocations team. But there's some of them starting at 7 in the morning and working late, and that's a good thing if you're working from home and it suits your environment. But no, if that's because the workload means that you've got to start at that time and back. And if you were in an office, folk would notice that. Are you okay that when you're managing? That's my concern, because we've got some excellent staff in the council, very conscientious, and over the last couple of years, certain departments have had to go, beyond normal capacity to try to deal with the frontline issues. So that's my concern. We've also got, there's one manager I can, I've never been able to get him on the phone in 15 years. I normally phone one of his staff and say, is he in? Well, he's in his office, we'll go and get him because he doesn't answer his phone. But if they're working from home, you've not got somebody there to go and get him, so you can't get him at all now. So that's the other concern. But on a whole, it's, if staff like working from home, I've not got a problem. But as I say, we've got to ensure that it's suitable to them that they've got a proper desk and chairs and the equipment, and that we're concerned about their physical health and mental health. Thank you.
Councillor Blackwood.
Sorry, convener, it's a legacy hand. Take it down.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to come in at this particular point? I think that the whole question of hybrid working requires considerable more thought and considered from the attitude of the member of staff and also from the demands that might be placed on the person member of staff by the council or the departments. I wonder, in actual fact, I haven't been able to see this wonderful place. I think they call it the Foundry for some ridiculous reason, but it sounds as though it's a lovely place. I'm speaking from Abbotsford House, so it's from the sublime to the ridiculous, or the opposite way around. But I do believe that I would just like to ask one thing, Tracy. Have we been careful to ensure that those who may wish to return to work out with their homes, be it full-time or on a part-time basis, are given ample facilities to welcome them back? Certainly wouldn't be the case in Abbotsford House, that's for sure, but I hope it would be. But I understand that the Foundry is full. So have we got the facilities available to welcome people back as they wish, or as indeed also as the council wishes as well?
Thanks, Councillor Patrick. I think what we've tried to do throughout the whole period of the pandemic is recognise individual circumstances, and where necessary, we've asked managers to look at kind of a prioritisation in terms of a return to work, in terms of the space that is available, especially when we needed to have and ensure physical distancing, for instance, in the capacity numbers as a result of COVID. So we suggested and encouraged different individual groups, if you like, to be given priority. So, for instance, an individual, like you've said, or Councillor McCluckie said, who might not have the necessary appropriate work environment. Now, that might be because they're in a one-bedroom flat and there's 3 people trying to work from home, or they've got young children within the workplace, and that's not necessarily useful or the best environment to be able to operate from. So those individuals, people who live on their own from a self-isolation perspective, or people who've got who are really struggling from a mental health perspective, are some of the kind of priorities and some of the groups that we've said these individual groups need to be given priority in terms of any space that we do have. But turning to space, we do believe that we will have sufficient space, given people's preferences and indications of how they wish to work moving forward. The Foundry was developed on the basis of a 0.5. The Karen Bank was developed on the basis of a 0.8. So we do believe that there is sufficient space available. And as I said earlier, we do have the desk booking system, which will allow us to assess usage in terms of individual days and generally across different locations. And where appropriate, we can start to reconfigure the numbers, if you like, in terms of who's based where. But we do believe that there should be sufficient space in the Foundry. And you should go and have a look, it's very nice.
Thank you for that, Tracy, and for your other responses. Does any member wish to come in on this point? Failing which, I would like to move to the recommendations. The recommendation highlights the situation whereby we have indeed a whole range of actions to be undertaken to support the employees. It's recognised, and I pay full credit to Tracy and officers for making sure that these responses are in place. Thank you. Now we're straight on to agenda item 7 on the care inspectorate inspection. I'm sorry, but I forget. Well, Lisa, I think you're coming back in to answer that one. Are you, Lisa McCabe?
Yes, good morning and thank you,
morning.
convener. I'm Lisa McCabe. I'm one of the Education Service Managers and I've been asked just to summarise this report. So this report pertains to the recent care inspection of Rannoch Early Learning and Childcare Centre in Grangemouth. The inspection took place in September 2021 and the report of inspection findings was published in October. Appendix 1 is that summary of inspection findings in full, and Appendix 2 gives the associated establishment action plan to take forward and progress the areas for improvement. If I could, convener, just draw members' attention to certain points within the report, particularly 3.3 in background, just to highlight the reason that this is being brought forward to Scrutiny Committee is that there were 2 quality indicators looked at during that inspection, and that's 2 of 4 indicators that possibly could be looked at. In all care inspections, quality of care and support is always reported on, and then there are 3 others that the care inspectorate randomly choose to look at. They choose one of those 3, and in this case it was the quality of environment that was looked at, and that is predetermined before they arrive on the day, and it is for reasons of an adequate evaluation in quality indicator quality of environment that this report is being brought forward for scrutiny. In the quality under quality of care and support, there was an evaluation of good given. So in terms of the national standards of quality for early learning and childcare, an evaluation of adequate falls below that standard, as it is expected that it would be evaluations of good or better that would be above standard. Also, just to draw members' attention to points 3.5 and 3.6 of the report, which draws a bit of distinction between what are recommendations and what are requirements. So recommendations are that there are areas identified for improvement where strengths are just outweighing weaknesses, but there is no statutory obligation within these recommendations. So that places those recommendations as suggestions for improvement that would be expected in order to bring that overall evaluation up to above the national standard. Care Inspectorate can also give requirements, which has a statutory element to that, and raises for everyone the level of significance that would therefore be required in that circumstance. Happily, it's recommendations that are being made within that evaluation of adequate and not requirements. So there is no statutory breach here. There is no breach in terms of the legal implications of how the setting is going about its business. There are 2 recommendations detailed for you in 3.6. And I won't read those out to you, but they pertain really in respect of the environment, given that that's where the evaluation of adequate was given. It's really around the offer of experiences to children, how those are organised and delivered, and some other aspects, particularly in these COVID times, where Care Inspectorate are particularly looking at the quality of infection control practices, cleanliness and the like. And there were some recommendations and suggestions for improvement in that area also. Under number 4 is considerations. So just to highlight there that there is in Appendix 2 an action plan. That action plan is required when there is an evaluation of adequate to be submitted to Care Inspectorate, and it is expected that there's a full detail given by the setting within 2 weeks of the published report as to what actions the setting would take in order to address those areas. And that report and the action plan is there for members to have a look at. Just moving on then to consultation number 5 in the report. It is important, I think, to highlight that during the inspection, as would be the case in all inspections, there is consultation that is carried out with carers, parents and carers, and some of those comments have been listed in the report itself. And I'm happy to say that much of that was very positive. So while there is this area for improvement and development within the setting, it is also true to say that parents and carers are satisfied that their children are being well cared for and are having a good experience at the centre, and that is documented within the report. There are some financial and resource implications. So as part of our wider 1140 expansion work within early learning and childcare, Rannoch Early Learning and Childcare Centre was profiled for some additional works to be undertaken, and just for various reasons, mainly to do with the pandemic and prioritising other capital programmes. That work was not undertaken at the time of inspection, but I'm happy to say that in Easter that work will be carried out, mainly for cosmetic reasons, where there will be areas of the establishment that will be repainted and some new flooring will be put down. And while that is not the full issue by any means, it does contribute to the overall quality of the environment. So we're happy to make that investment. And just very finally, to conclude and to summarise, this report has been brought forward to committee for consideration of the evaluation of adequate that was given in the recent care inspection for Rannoch ELC Centre pertaining to the quality of the environment, and to give members some reassurance that remedial action will be taken, and that is documented in Appendix 2 of the report. And I'm very happy, convener, to take any questions.
Thank you very much for that, Lisa. It's an important report, and I'm pleased to note that the actual comments regarding the suitability and contribution of the staff involved. Could I say, however, that with that having been said, I regret the fact that the decision was made not by the council, of course, but by the inspectorate, that there would be no inspection actually of the quality of staffing or the management. I think that we have absolutely nothing to hide, and I think it would have been appropriate, in actual fact, that this had taken place. But the report does reassure us that that this is being well recognised and provided for, and I'm grateful to you for that. Can I ask you? You mentioned the structural, or at least the introduction of some cash to improve the situation. I had visualised, I must confess, I don't know this care home in any great detail, but I had been visualised a reasonably modern facility, and presume, therefore, as you say, that we're only dealing mainly with cosmetic improvements to improve the care of the child and the support that the staff require. I'm grateful to you for that. Can I throw it open for anyone who wishes to ask questions on the report?
Convener, I wonder if I may, just while others are maybe wanting to come in, just respond to the comment that you made about staffing and leadership. I think that is a really important comment, and just to say that Care Inspectorate does reserve the right, if they arrive to carry out an inspection, and all care inspections are unannounced inspections, so there is no lead-in time, and that is the arrangement that is in place with that body. And we do, by presumption, look at 2 quality indicators to evaluate on. When they are there, should they be so concerned about the level of care and support to young children, they reserve the right then to scrutinise and report on all 4 quality indicators. And if that is the case, that does again escalate the level of concern, because that wouldn't be usual. The Care Institute use a sampling process in terms of their work. I'm happy to say that they chose not to do that, which does indicate that in their other inspection activities there is a level of confidence that they were able to glean while they were undertaking their inspection activities on the day, that they did have confidence in management and staff to be able to take forward the improvement actions. So I think that is worth noting, that is a that is something that they reserve the right to do, but chose not to do in this circumstance. I think adds a confidence into this picture and should reassure, I hope, members of that. But just to say also that we are very, as officers, very heavily involved in all of our centres and settings, and part of what you describe there, convener, about some of the cosmetic improvements that we want to make is to try to ensure that staff continue to be motivated to come to work every day and do their very, very best work, as well as creating and making a contribution within the gift that we have to the quality of the environment for the children and families who visit. So just to thank you, convener, for making that point about staffing and leadership.
Thank you, Lisa. I think it was important that caring members of families with children receiving the care that we provide are given that reassurance that in actual fact that confidence has been placed on the staff, and that this is the reason which initially puzzled me, that the investigation, or the report rather, was not expanded in that area. Councillor Binney, you wish to come in, please?
Yeah, I just wanted a wee bit further understand, a wee bit clarity with regard to the recommendations, and with you speaking about there's going to be some cosmetic change. I'm really pleased to hear that. That's really, really good. But you spoke in the recommendations and it says, including ensuring children can freely access a wide range of open-ended real life and natural materials for play. Assume perhaps, is that more play outside there? Obviously in a play area, if you're going to make cosmetic changes, will that include that in that particular recommendation?
So, Councillor Binney, thank you for that question. And in terms of the work that we will do cosmetically, that's to the inside of the building. So it's retouching up the painting of the playrooms and relaying some of the floor that just has, with young children every day using it over many years, has just become a bit worn. So that will be our investment to the internal playrooms of the nursery. Outdoors, though, there has been very significant developments that staff have themselves undertaken over the last while, and that has included, cleaning up their sand pit, digging out some of the kind of weeded area that was in a part of their garden, and I'm happy to say that they've been really well supported to do that by parents and carers and members of the local community. So the setting itself, as part of their wider service improvement plan, has outdoor play and learning as part of their ongoing improvement. It's one of these things that just needs to keep, you need to keep on top of. You can find that your garden can grow very, very quickly if it's not tended to. So that is always an element that they're looking, and part of our work we do with all settings is to promote as far as possible the value of outdoor play and learning for young children. It really is a crucial part of their experience. In terms of specifically the resources that were mentioned in your question, Councillor Binney, about the kind of open-ended nature of that and the natural materials, there's a lot of research just now and through our national guidance about what makes for a high quality environment for young children. We really like staff to think, even in the indoors, about materials that maybe don't have a specific purpose that leads the child to a particular kind of play. So if I could describe that, for example, by a toy hoover that really can only be a hoover, or against that, a wooden block where the child can add their own imagination to that, and it can become a hoover, or it can become a telephone, or it can become something else that the child just wants it to be. So we're asking this group of staff to think, have they got the balance of that just quite right within their experiences, and could they perhaps add more of those open-ended and natural materials just to encourage children's imaginations and play a bit more so than perhaps they have at present.
Thank you. That was very informative. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Binney. I don't want to expand on the contents of the report or the responses, particularly since it goes into areas that I have little experience of. But could I just refer to 3.6 to ask you, perhaps you could expand slightly on the first bullet point recommendation, which refers to striking this balance. The word balance has already been raised between organised and freely chosen play experiences. Could you like to comment on that requirement?
Yes, convener, and that really does build on Councillor Binney's, I think, question. It's not the case by any means that those experiences were not being offered to the young children in Rannoch. It was simply that thing about balance. You know, it was saying, you know, we do have national guidance that is asking now that more than ever young children are in early learning and childcare settings for a longer day. And what that really invites the practitioners to do is to think about how stimulating these play activities are. And we do know from research, and we do know from our national guidance that pertains particularly to young children, when we have materials and resources that don't overly guide them to a certain type of experience or type of play that they will get bored with, perhaps quite quickly, that really to help them sustain their interest and to develop those experiences, then it is these open-ended types of resources that particularly lend well to that kind of experience and just help children be a bit more creative and extend and perhaps sustain some of their thinking and some of their play. So the setting is being invited to do that self-evaluation, really that audit of their own environment, and to, you know, to make those decisions as to whether the balance there is being struck. And I'm happy to say that already, because, you know, at this point a number of months has passed since the inspection, and I'm very happy to say that already considerable improvement has been made around that. So you know, I visit the setting on a weekly basis if I can, sometimes fortnightly, and already we can see that there has been an injection of more of those types of learning experiences and types of resources, and you can see the children engage with those differently than they would do other types of resources, and staff are feeling the benefit of that and getting a great deal of satisfaction from seeing how children are using these resources.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Does anyone else wish to raise a question? If not, I would just simply go to the recommendations. I thank Lisa for her fulsome support of the paper, and also to note that there will in fact be a further visit arranged by the Inspectorate, which I'm sure will be welcomed. Although I have some personal experience of a past existence of the regular unannounced inspections, which can be demanding, but certainly absolutely nothing to hide, but a good story to tell. And I thank everyone involved, and thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
So, yes, Brian.
I'm just wondering, just with that in mind, whether the committee would want to ask for a report, much in the way you did with the Slamanian report, is once the inspectors have been and made their follow-up report, if that's reported back to the committee, so that the whole kind of matter can be closed off. If committee are happy with that, I can put that as a recommendation, then it'll go in the rolling action log, so we make sure it doesn't fall off the chart.
I think that would be more than welcome, and I'm sure that the members of the Scrutiny Committee at that particular time, who will undoubtedly in some cases not be the same people, will welcome the opportunity of revisiting the whole issue and the inspectorate follow-up report when it comes. Yes, indeed, if it could be carried on to a rolling action log for some time in approximately a year's
I
time.
agree, convener. And I'm going to try with Ruby when she tells me to get the Hoover out to get a wee block of wood and go and tell her that's my Hoover. But yes, thank you very much.
Well, as long as you keep out of the sandpit, John, you were perfectly okay. Anyway, thank you very much, everyone, for the recommendations. I trust are approved. I thank you all for your contributions and interest today. I particularly thank Karen, and of course Anne-Marie for their contributions to the reports this morning. Thank you very much indeed.